The most terrifying monster in my house wasn't hiding in the shadows. It was the son I raised, standing in my own living room, holding my life in his hands. My name is Eleanor, and at 68 years old, I discovered that the child I loved was a stranger, and my home had become a hunting ground. It all started with a forgotten repair. For weeks, my security system had been down, and my son, David, and his wife, Chloe, had insisted on moving in to take care of me. The bitter irony of that phrase would soon choke me. I'd secretly hired a technician to fix the cameras, a small act of independence I'd forgotten to mention to them. And that forgetfulness saved me. I remember the moment my world shattered. It was a Tuesday morning. David had supposedly left for a job interview, Chloe for the grocery store. The house was quiet. A notification popped up on my phone. The security app was active. On a whim, I tapped it. And there they were. Not out building their future, but in my living room, desecrating my past. My important documents, the deeds, the insurance papers, the fragile architecture of my life, were scattered across the coffee table like trash. David held the thick folder from my locked desk drawer. Chloe was holding a paper up to the light, her face a mask of cold calculation. Then I heard her voice, crystal clear through the app's audio. "Where is the original deed, David? Michael told us he specifically needs the original to make the forgery believable." Michael. A name that sent a shiver of ice down my spine. A lawyer David had met, a man with shifty eyes and a handshake that felt like a threat. "It has to be here," David replied, his voice thick with a frustration I'd never heard directed at me before. "Mom is so meticulous with these things." He said the word meticulous like it was a curse. The very trait he'd once praised me for was now his greatest obstacle. Chloe moved closer to the window, the paper catching the sun. "Look at this. The last appraisal values the house at over $500,000. Michael was right. It's worth all this effort. $500,000. The value of 30 years of double shifts as a nurse. The value of every scraped knee I bandaged, every nightmare I soothed, every dream I deferred for the boy now plotting my erasure. The walls you build to keep danger out can become the very walls that trap you inside. And I was about to learn that the most dangerous predators are the ones who already have a key." Chloe's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. "Once we have the deed in our name," she said, her tone as casual as if she were discussing the weather, "we can sell and move her into something smaller. A one-bedroom apartment will be more than enough for her last years." Her last years. They were measuring my life in square footage and dollar signs. I watched, paralyzed, as David strode into my bedroom on the camera feed, rifling through my drawers, my private spaces. He returned, empty-handed, his face flushed. "She has to have a safe deposit box or something. She was always so paranoid about important documents." Paranoid. Another virtue twisted into a flaw. Chloe's patience was thinning. "Michael gave us until Friday to get the original deed. Without it, he can't do the job. And without the job, we'll keep living on the crumbs your mother gives us." Crumbs. She called the $700 a month I gave them from my modest pension crumbs. Money I gave freely to keep the peace, to help my boy. "We'll pressure her more," David said, slumping into my favorite armchair, the one where I'd rocked him to sleep as a colicky baby. "We'll tell her it's medical insurance papers, something urgent she needs to sign. She's been so confused lately, she won't even read what she's signing." Confused. It was true. Sometimes names took a moment longer to surface, a normal fog of age. But they had been nurturing that narrative, sprinkling seeds of doubt about my own mind every time I questioned them. "What if she gets suspicious?" Chloe asked. David shrugged with an indifference that broke something fundamental inside me. "What's she going to do? Call the police on her own son? Besides, once we sign the papers with Michael, it'll be too late to reverse the process." A cruel, satisfied smile spread across Chloe's face. Perfect. Then tomorrow we'll bring her Michael's documents and tell her it's for updating her will. She'll sign without asking questions." As they rose to leave, David paused. He looked directly into the camera lens. For a heart-stopping second, I thought he saw me, saw the truth reflected in the unblinking eye of the device, but his gaze was distant, troubled. "I wish we didn't have to do this," he murmured, almost to himself. A microscopic flicker of hope ignited in my chest. My boy was still in there, fighting. But Chloe extinguished it instantly. "Are you getting cold feet?" Her voice was sharp. "David, honey, think about our future, the children we want to have. Are we going to depend on an old woman who gets more senile every day? This house is our chance for independence." I watched his face transform. The brief conflict vanished, replaced by a hard resolve I didn't recognize. Greed had won. "You're right," he said, his voice flat. "It's time to think about us." They left the room, and I was left alone in the kitchen, the ghost of the mother I used to be, watching the ghost of the son I thought I had. The greatest betrayals aren't announced with shouts. They are whispered in the quiet of a familiar room by the people who promise to love you forever. For 35 years, I had built my life around him. I was the architect of his comfort, the shield against his storms. And now, my greatest creation had become my executioner. But they had made a fatal mistake. They thought I was a weak, confused old woman. They didn't know I now had eyes everywhere. They didn't know the war had just begun. And they had already lost the first battle without firing a single shot. The evidence was in my hands, recorded, saved. The power had shifted. And I, Eleanor, the forgotten, the underestimated, was ready to fight for the life I built. If this story of a mother's shattered trust is gripping your heart, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring these powerful, true life stories to light. There is so much more to come. Living a double life at 68 is a special kind of hell. For the next 3 days, I wore a mask of normalcy, smiling as my son kissed my forehead, cooking their favorite meals while my soul screamed in silence. Inside, I was a detective in my own home, a spy behind enemy lines, documenting the meticulous destruction of my life. The security app on my phone became my obsession, a window into the conspiracy unfolding in my living room. The morning after I discovered their plot, I watched them plan their next move. Chloe was on the couch, her laptop open like a command center. David paced, a caged animal of nervous energy. "Michael says the documents are ready," Chloe informed him, not looking up from the screen. "But he needs the original deed for the final signature comparisons." I saw the fear flicker in David's eyes. "What if Mom notices it's missing?" He bit his nails, a childhood habit I thought he'd outgrown. It was a tiny, heartbreaking glimpse of the anxious boy he used to be. Chloe dismissed him with a wave. "David, your mother is 68. She hasn't looked at those documents in years. We can just borrow it for a few hours and return it before she even notices." Borrow. They discussed the theft of my home soul with the casualness of someone borrowing a cup of sugar. But what if... David stopped, his eyes darting toward the kitchen where I was pretending to make lunch. What if she gets suspicious? I've noticed her being more attentive lately, like she's watching us. My blood ran cold. Had my acting been that transparent? Chloe laughed, a dry, harsh sound. "David, please. Your mother spends her days watching soap operas and talking to the plants. If she were so attentive, she would have noticed you haven't been on a single real job interview in 2 weeks." 2 weeks. The lie of his job search, a performance designed to keep me docile, laid bare. The man I raised was not just a thief, he was a full-time actor in a play where I was the mark. "You're right," David admitted, though his voice lacked conviction. "It's just, I feel like she's judging me all the time." "That's your conscience," Chloe retorted, her voice like steel. "You still see that woman as your saintly mother instead of the obstacle she is." An obstacle. I was no longer a person to them. I was a thing in their way. When the people you love become strangers, every familiar gesture feels like a lie, and every kind word tastes like poison. Besides, Chloe continued, snapping her laptop shut, once we have the house, we can find a nice retirement community for her. Something affordable. With the $500,000 from the sale, we can invest in our own business and still have plenty to manage her care. Retirement community. The euphemism was as transparent as glass. They wanted to sell the walls that held my memories and use the proceeds to lock me away. The cruelty was so calculated, it took my breath away. David finally sat. The fight, draining out of him. "You really think it'll work?" "Michael's done this before," Chloe said, stroking his hair as if he were a child. It was a gesture of domination, not comfort. "He has a contact at the public registry. The house will be in our names in 2 weeks. Tops. 2 weeks. My life, my security, my history, all on a deadline. And the money?" David asked. "Michael charges $25,000 for the whole process. It's a lot, but think of the return. It's a worthwhile investment." $25,000. That was the price tag they had put on my trust, on 35 years of motherhood. I sat there in my kitchen, the smell of their breakfast still in the air, and realized I was not just fighting for my house. I was fighting against a multi-thousand-dollar business transaction where I was the asset to be liquidated. That night, after they went to bed, I reviewed the day's recordings. I had it all. The names, the dates, the amounts, the cold-blooded confession of their intent. The evidence was a weapon, but I couldn't bring myself to use it. Not yet. A stubborn, foolish part of me, the part that remembered teaching him to tie his shoes, still hoped for a miracle. I needed to see how far they would go. I needed to look my son in the eye and give him one last chance to remember who he was. The deepest wounds are not from the knives of enemies, but from the gentle hands of those we thought would never harm us, hands that now hold the precise blueprint of our destruction. The confrontation came on Wednesday. Rain tapped against the windows like a warning. They sat me down at the dining table with a folder of documents that smelled of fresh ink and fresh betrayal. "Eleanor," Chloe began, her voice syrupy with fake concern, "we've been thinking about your future, your security." David took my hand. His touch, once a comfort, now felt like a violation. "A lawyer friend of mine helped us prepare some papers to update all your legal documentation. It's standard stuff, Mom, for your own good." They slid the papers toward me. I could see dense blocks of text, legal jargon designed to confuse and obfuscate, but I picked out the deadly phrases: transfer of assets, irrevocable power of attorney, assignment of property rights. My heart hammered against my ribs. "I don't really understand all this," I said, feigning the confusion they expected from me. "Could you explain it more slowly?" A flash of impatience crossed Chloe's face. David's smile tightened. "Mom, it's boring technical things," he said, pointing to signature lines marked with X's. "The important thing is, you sign here. The lawyer says it's urgent because of new tax laws." Lies. All of it. "What if I want to read everything first?" I asked. "I'm a slow reader, but I like to understand what I'm signing." The mask slipped completely. "Eleanor," Chloe snapped, "it's over 20 pages. It would take you days. And as David said, it's urgent. Besides," David added, his voice gaining an edge, "we trust the lawyer. He's a respected professional." Respected. Michael, the forger. I placed my hands on the table, steadying myself. "Well," I said, my voice quiet but clear, "let me think about it until tomorrow. It's a very important decision." The silence was immediate and absolute. I had disrupted their timeline. I saw the panic in their exchanged glance. "Mom!" David said, his voice hardening. "We really need you to sign today. We have an appointment with the lawyer tomorrow morning." "What opportunity?" I asked, my eyes locked on his. Chloe leaned forward, her patience gone. "The opportunity to protect yourself legally, Eleanor. Don't you trust us? Don't you trust your own son?" There it was. The ultimate manipulation, turning my caution into a rejection of family. They had played their final card. I looked at my son, at the stranger wearing his face, and I knew the time for pretending was over. The war was no longer cold. It was declared. This is just the beginning of Eleanor's fight for survival. To make sure you don't miss the moment she turns the tables, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. The truth is about to get much, much darker. My son's shout echoed through the house, a sound I had never heard in all his 35 years. It was the sound of the last bridge between us burning to ash. In that moment, the loving son was gone, replaced by a desperate man whose victim was refusing to be victimized. "Mom!" David yelled, his face contorted. "You don't need to call anyone, just sign the damn papers." The curse word hung in the air, toxic and final. I looked at him, this man I had created, and let the silence stretch. "David," I whispered, letting the hurt show, "why are you yelling at me?" He recoiled, instantly realizing his mistake. The mask of the concerned son scrambled back into place. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I've just been so stressed. The job hunt, the finances. It's overwhelming." Chloe placed a hand on his arm, a silent command to get control. But the beast had been unveiled. I stood my ground. "I understand you're stressed," I said, rising from the table, "but I'm not signing anything until I'm sure what it means. I'm old, David, not an idiot." I took the fraudulent documents and placed them in a kitchen drawer, a small symbolic act of reclaiming my territory. "Nobody said you were an idiot," he muttered, but the threat beneath his words was clear. I retreated to my room, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, but I wasn't running away. I was going to my command post. I opened the security app, but the audio from their room was dead. A coincidence? I doubted it. They were getting careful, but they weren't careful enough. I could still see them at the dining table, their heads close together, whispering in frantic, heated tones. When you strip away the lies, what remains is the ugly, naked truth. And I was about to learn that my son and his wife were not just thieves. They were architects of a new, terrifying reality designed to make me disappear. "This isn't working," Chloe hissed, her face sharp with anger. "She was supposed to sign without questions." "She's suspicious," David replied, "like she knows something. We need a new strategy. If she won't sign the easy way, we make her life so difficult she has no choice but to comply." I watched, frozen, as Chloe laid out a plan of such insidious cruelty. It stole my breath. "Your mother depends on us, David. Her supplemental insurance, the car for her appointments, the heavy groceries. What happens if that support vanishes?" David's eyes widened as he understood. "We cut her off, force her to rely solely on her pension." "Exactly," Chloe said, a malicious smile playing on her lips. "Without our car, she takes buses. Without our help, she carries her own groceries. Without the extra money, she cancels her private medical care. How long do you think a 68-year-old woman used to her comforts will last?" "It's brilliant," David admitted, and the pride in his voice was a knife in my heart. "We pressure her financially. She has no choice but to sign to get our support back. They were not just trying to steal my house, they were going to systematically dismantle my quality of life, my health, and my independence to break my will. This was elder abuse, planned with the cold precision of a military campaign." "How long?" David asked. Chloe shrugged. "A woman her age? 2 weeks, tops." 2 weeks. The same deadline for their legal fraud. The synchronization was horrifying. The next phase of their war began immediately. From my room, I heard David on the phone. Yes, I want to cancel Eleanor Vance's supplemental insurance policy, effective immediately. I'm her son. I have authority. A lie. He had no legal authority, but the company didn't question it. My protection was vanishing with a simple phone call. The most dangerous prison is the one built around your mind, with your own loved ones as the jailers, convincing you that the walls are for your own protection. The following day, they launched their new offensive with sickening sweetness. "Eleanor," Chloe said at breakfast, "we need to talk about our finances. David's job search hasn't panned out. Our savings are gone." "That means," David continued with a grave expression, "we have to make some temporary cuts. Your supplemental insurance, using the car, the extra expenses we cover." He paused, letting the weight of it crush me. "They're temporary, of course, until we find a more permanent solution." I played my part, the confused and worried mother. And what would that permanent solution be? Chloe leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "Well, Eleanor, if we had signed those legal documents, we'd have the security to make long-term investments in our family's situation." The connection was chi luo luo de, the blackmail explicit. No documents, no support. I looked from my son's determined face to his wife's triumphant one. I had to end this charade. "So," I said, my voice dropping all pretense of confusion, "the documents weren't just for my protection." The air left the room. "No," I continued, standing up. "You want what's best for you, and you're willing to destroy me to get it." The silence was profound. Then the unthinkable happened. They didn't deny it. They changed the entire battlefield. "Mom," David said, his voice dripping with a new, terrifying form of condescension, "I think you're misinterpreting our intentions." "Oh, really?" I retorted. "Then explain the coincidence." "Eleanor," Chloe intervened, her voice soft and patronizing, "I understand you might feel confused by all this complex information." "I'm not confused," I shot back. "I'm betrayed." The word landed between us like a corpse. David physically flinched. "Betrayed," I repeated, "by the son I raised alone." "I don't want to steal anything from you," he exploded. "We're trying to secure our shared future." "Our future?" I laughed, the sound bitter and broken. "Your plan is to sell my house and put me in a retirement home. Where am I in that shared future? As the inmate?" And then I played my card. I took my phone from my pocket. "Do you want me to remind you of your exact words about finding something affordable but comfortable for my last years?" The color drained from their faces. They stared at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. You've been recording us?" David whispered. "No," I said with deadly calm. "You've been confessing. You forgot the camera I had repaired was working perfectly." The shock lasted only a second before their strategy shifted again, turning into something far more sinister. Chloe was the first to recover, her eyes calculating. "And how long have you been spying on your own family, Eleanor?" she asked. Her tone implying the answer was evidence of my instability, not their crime. This was no longer a fight over property. It was a fight for my sanity, for my right to be believed, and it was a fight I could not afford to lose. The gaslight had been lit, and I was standing directly in its blinding, treacherous flame. The battle for Eleanor's mind and home is reaching its devastating climax. To be there for the final shocking confrontation, subscribe now. You won't want to miss how this ends. The silence after my accusation was a living thing, thick and heavy with panic and calculation. My son David and his wife Chloe were no longer just caught. They were re-evaluating me. The confused old woman was gone. In her place stood a witness, an adversary with evidence, and their response was to try and destroy my credibility forever. Chloe was the first to speak, her voice a masterful blend of concern and condescension. "Eleanor, those are very serious accusations. Do you have any proof?" "I have your voices," I said, holding up my phone. I have you talking about Michael, the $25,000, the retirement home. David found his voice, but it was Chloe's poison that filled it. Mom, what you have are snippets of conversation taken out of context, normal family discussions about your future security that your mind has twisted into threats. They were brilliant, diabolical. They were turning my proof into my pathology. You said I was an obstacle, I insisted, desperation creeping in. We said your resistance to planning was an obstacle to us helping you properly, Chloe corrected, her tone patient, as if speaking to a child. David moved closer, his face a mask of fake worry. Mom, we're worried about you, this behavior, the paranoia, the accusations, spying on us. It's not normal. Maybe you need to talk to someone, a professional, a psychiatrist. They wanted to paint me as insane. I felt the ground crumbling beneath me. Every piece of evidence I had, they were reframing as a symptom of my mental decline. But I had one card left to play. If it's all so innocent, I said, my voice trembling with a fury I could no longer contain, then you won't mind me showing these documents to an independent lawyer, someone I choose. The silence that followed was all the confession I needed. Their panic was palpable. Of course, Chloe finally said, but the lie was naked in her eyes. The next few days were a descent into a special kind of psychological torture. They treated me with cloying, exaggerated kindness, speaking in soft voices, constantly asking if I felt confused or had a headache. I was living in a house of mirrors where every reflection was distorted to make me look like the villain, the paranoid, unstable mother. The climax of their new strategy came when I overheard David on the phone with my own doctor, Dr. Evans. Yes, doctor, it's David Vance. I'm very concerned about my mother, Eleanor. She's developed severe paranoid behaviors. Believes we're conspiring against her. Yes, she installed secret cameras. He was building a false medical record, poisoning the well of my credibility at its source. I had to act. I called Dr. Evans myself. Doctor, it's Eleanor. My son is lying to you. They are trying to steal my house. I recounted everything, my voice shaking with a combination of rage and fear. Dr. Evans, a good woman who had known me for 15 years, listened. Eleanor, these are criminal accusations. If they're true, we need to involve the authorities. But first, I need to see you. Now. She put me through a full battery of cognitive tests. Memory, reasoning, orientation. I passed them all with flying colors. Eleanor, she said finally, her face grim, you are one of the sharpest patients I have. There is zero evidence of cognitive decline. What you're describing is not paranoia. It's intuition about a real and present danger. Armed with her official report and the contact for a private investigator she recommended, I went on the offensive. The next morning, while David and Chloe slept, a technician entered my home and wired me for sound and vision. Tiny, undetectable cameras were placed in the living room. A microphone was hidden on my person. The trap was set. We sat down for the document review later that day. I was calm. A hunter disguised as prey. I led them through their own script, asking innocent questions that forced them to reveal their hand. I pointed out the clause that gave them power to sell my house. I mentioned the retirement home. I brought up Michael, the forger. With each revelation, their composure cracked. You've been spying on us, David finally accused, his voice a snarl. I've been protecting myself, I corrected, from my own son. Sometimes, the only way to save the family you have is to destroy the monster it has become. And I was finally ready to be the destroyer. Chloe, cornered and furious, walked up to me until we were inches apart. It doesn't matter. You have no proof. We destroyed your recordings. We removed the cameras. We admit you're a stupid old woman who almost ruined everything, David spat, his face a grotesque mask of hatred. But you're going to sign anyway. And if I refuse? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Then we get a medical certificate declaring you incompetent, Chloe said with a cruel smile. We have contacts. We put you in the cheapest home we can find and sell this house. Our future. Without you. David looked at me, my own child, and delivered the final killing blow. Because frankly, Mom, you've already served your purpose. There it was, the complete, unvarnished, recorded confession. I looked at him, at the emptiness in his eyes, and I felt nothing but a profound, chilling peace. The war was over. I dropped the pen I was holding. You're right about one thing, David, I said. I was a stupid old woman to believe you could ever be the man I raised you to be. Then I looked toward the front door and gave a slight nod. It swung open. The private detective, 2 police officers, and my lawyer walked in. The shock on their faces was absolute. David Vance. Chloe Vance, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted forgery, and financial elder abuse. The detective explained they had high-definition audio and video of the entire conversation. As the police handcuffed my son, he looked at me, not with remorse, but with a burning hatred. This is all your fault. If you had been a normal mother, none of this would have been necessary. I looked at the boy I had loved more than life itself, now a stranger in handcuffs, and I finally spoke my truth. David, I said, my voice steady, you destroyed this family the moment you decided my life was worth only the money you could get for this house. I'm simply protecting what's left of my dignity. They were led away. The silence they left behind was not the silence of loneliness, but of peace, of a battle ended, of a life reclaimed. In the end, they took a plea deal. They renounced all claim to my property, agreed to stay away from me permanently, and served time. People ask me if I regret sending my only son to prison. My answer is always the same. I don't regret the mother I was. I only regret that his love had a price, and my home was the currency. I live in my house now in a peace I earned through fire. And I learned that family isn't defined by blood, but by respect. And sometimes, to save yourself, you have to be willing to lose the person you thought you loved the most. If this story of betrayal and incredible strength resonated with you, please support this channel by subscribing and leaving a comment below telling me what you thought. Your engagement helps bring these important truths to light. There are 2 more incredible stories of survival on your screen right now I know you'll love. Don't forget to subscribe. Until the next life story, with love and respect.